In a distant corner of the galaxy, far from Earth's blue skies and green fields, there was a group of mercenaries known as the Iron Fangs. They were feared across star systems for their ruthlessness and skill in battle. Their reputation had grown over decades, earning them contracts from wealthy clients who needed dirty work done without questions or hesitation. The Iron Fangs operated out of their massive flagship, the Crimson Talon, a vessel that looked like it could tear through anything in its path. Its dark metal hull gleamed under the light of nearby stars, and its engines roared with power whenever it moved. On this particular day, Captain Ryan Carter stood in the war room aboard the Crimson Talon. His face was lined with scars, some physical, others emotional, and his piercing gray eyes scanned the holographic map floating above the table. Around him sat his trusted crew, all waiting for him to speak. There was Samantha Sam Brooks, his second-in-command, whose sharp mind often saved them from disaster. Ethan Cole, the tech genius, fiddled nervously with a small device in his hands. Mia Torres, the demolitions expert, leaned back in her chair with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Lucas Bell, the sniper, sat silently at the edge of the table polishing his rifle. And finally, Jacob Hayes, the pilot, tapped his fingers impatiently on the armrest of his seat. Ryan cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "We've got a new contract," he began, his voice low but commanding. He let the words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "It's big, really big. A syndicate has offered us more credits than we've ever seen before." The room stirred slightly, curiosity piqued. Credits always caught their attention. It meant better gear, upgrades, and maybe even a chance to retire someday. But something about Ryan's tone told them this wasn't going to be an easy job. "What's the target?" Sam asked, leaning forward. Her blonde hair fell over one shoulder as she fixed her gaze on Ryan. Ryan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Earth Special Forces Unit Delta Vanguard." The reaction was immediate. Ethan dropped the device he'd been holding, letting it clatter onto the floor. Mia stiffened visibly, her jaw tightening. Even Lucas stopped polishing his rifle, looking up with wide eyes. Jacob whistled softly under his breath, shaking his head. "Delta Vanguard?" Mia repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Are you serious?" "No one takes on Delta Vanguard and lives to tell the tale." Ryan nodded grimly. "That's exactly why they're paying us so much. They know no one else will touch this job." For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of what Ryan had just said settled heavily over the room. Delta Vanguard wasn't just another military unit. They were legends. Stories of their exploits had spread throughout the galaxy, whispered in cantinas and trading posts by those who claimed to have witnessed their prowess firsthand. Tales of how they dismantled entire fleets single-handedly, how they infiltrated impenetrable fortresses, and how they never, ever gave up, not even when outnumbered or outgunned. Samantha broke the silence first. "You've heard the stories, haven't you?" she said quietly, glancing around the table. When no one responded, she continued, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "Remember the Battle of Epsilon 7? That coalition of bounty hunters thought they could take them down, thought they had the advantage with numbers. What happened instead?" Lucas answered, his voice barely above a whisper. "They got slaughtered. 10-to-1 odds, and Delta Vanguard wiped them out like they were nothing." Jacob chimed in, his usual cockiness replaced with unease. "And that ambush near the Vega cluster? Rumor says Delta Vanguard hacked into the enemy's comms and turned their own ships against them. Took out 3 cruisers in less than 5 minutes." Ethan picked up the device he'd dropped earlier, turning it over in his hands absent-mindedly. "It's not just their tech," he muttered. "It's something else. Something we can't replicate. They don't fight like machines. They fight like humans. Like they have something to lose." Ryan rubbed his temples, feeling the pressure mounting. He knew his team was right. Delta Vanguard wasn't just another opponent. They were a force of nature. Their leader, Commander Alex Hart, had become a mythic figure among soldiers and mercenaries alike. Though Hart had since retired, the unit he built remained as formidable as ever, Now led by someone new, Delta Vanguard continued to strike fear into the hearts of anyone foolish enough to cross them. But refusing this contract wasn't an option either. Turning down such a lucrative offer would damage the Iron Fang's reputation irreparably. Worse still, the syndicate that issued the contract wasn't known for taking rejection lightly. If they backed out now, retaliation would come swiftly and violently. "We can't say no," Ryan said finally, his voice firm despite the doubt gnawing at him. "If we walk away, we'll lose everything. Our name, our credibility, maybe even our lives." Sam frowned, clearly unconvinced. "And if we go after Delta Vanguard, what then? Do you really think we stand a chance against them?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at the holographic map, tracing the projected route to Earth's outer colonies where Delta Vanguard was reportedly stationed. He knew the risks, all of them did. But deep down he also knew they couldn't afford to back down. "Not now. We'll prepare," he said at last, meeting each of their gazes in turn. "Every piece of intel, every weapon, every strategy, we'll use it all. We won't underestimate them. Because if we do..." He trailed off, leaving the unspoken consequences hanging in the air. Mia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Fine," she snapped. "But don't expect me to die happy about this. Delta Vanguard doesn't play fair, they don't fight clean, and they sure as hell don't lose." With that, she stormed out of the war room, leaving the rest of the team in uneasy silence. One by one, the others followed suit, retreating to their quarters or stations to begin preparations. Only Sam stayed behind, watching Ryan closely. "You're worried," she stated plainly, folding her arms across her chest. Ryan sighed, running a hand through his grizzled hair. "Of course I am. Who wouldn't be? This isn't just another mission, Sam, it's suicide." She nodded slowly, her expression softening. "Then why are we doing it?" "Because we don't have a choice," he replied, his voice heavy with resignation. "Sometimes you take the risk because staying alive means taking the next step, even if that step feels like walking straight into hell." Sam didn't respond right away. She simply studied him for a moment, then turned and walked toward the door. Before stepping out, she paused and looked back over her shoulder. "Just promise me one thing, Ryan." He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "That if things go south, and they probably will, you'll make sure we get out alive. All of us." Ryan managed a faint smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'll do my best, Sam. That's all any of us can do." As the door slid shut behind her, Ryan returned his attention to the holographic map. The glowing lines and markers seemed to mock him, reminding him of the impossible task ahead. For the first time in years, he felt truly uncertain about their chances. Delta Vanguard wasn't just another enemy. They were a symbol of humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and determination. And now, the Iron Fangs were being asked to destroy that symbol. Ryan clenched his fists, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Whatever happened, one thing was certain: this mission would change them all, forever. The next morning aboard the Crimson Talon, the mood was tense. The crew moved about their duties with quiet efficiency, but there was an undercurrent of unease that no one could ignore. Even the hum of the ship's engines seemed louder than usual, as if the vessel itself knew the gravity of the task ahead. In the mess hall, conversations were sparse, limited to murmurs and nods. Plates clinked softly against tables, and the smell of reheated food filled the air, though few had much of an appetite. Ryan Carter sat alone at a corner table, staring into his cup of lukewarm coffee. His mind raced with thoughts of Delta Vanguard, their reputation, their tactics, their unshakable resolve. He replayed every story he'd ever heard about them, each one more daunting than the last. There was the time they infiltrated a heavily fortified asteroid base, using nothing but stolen uniforms and sheer audacity, or the legendary standoff at Titan Station, where they held off waves of attackers for days, despite dwindling supplies. These weren't just tales of skill. They were stories of survival, of triumph against impossible odds. Samantha Brooks joined him a few minutes later, sliding into the seat across from him without saying a word. She placed her tray on the table and began picking at her food, though it was clear she wasn't hungry either. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, yet comfortable, a shared understanding of the burden they carried. Finally, Sam broke the quiet. "You've been thinking about it all night, haven't you?" Ryan glanced up, surprised by her perceptiveness. "Is it that obvious?" She smirked faintly. "You're not exactly hard to read when you're brooding like this. What's going through your head?" He hesitated, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "I keep wondering, what makes them so different? Why does everyone talk about them like they're untouchable?" Sam leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "It's not just their training or their tech. It's something deeper. They fight like they have something to protect, not just a paycheck or a contract. They believe in what they're doing." Ryan nodded slowly. "That's what scares me. We're mercenaries. We take jobs because we get paid. But Delta Vanguard, they fight for Earth, for humanity. How do you compete with that?" Sam didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. She slid it across the table toward Ryan. "Here. I think you should see this." He picked it up, examining it curiously. "What is it?" "It's footage," she explained. "From the Battle of Epsilon 7. You've heard the stories, but seeing it, it's different." Ryan frowned, unsure if he wanted to watch it, but curiosity got the better of him. He stood and headed to the nearest holoscreen station, inserting the chip into the console. Within moments, the screen flickered to life, displaying grainy but clear recordings of the infamous battle. The scene unfolded before him, a coalition of bounty hunters and rogue mercenaries swarming around a seemingly defenseless outpost. There, ships outnumbered Delta Vanguard's forces 10-1, and their confidence was evident in their chaotic formation. But then, everything changed. From hidden positions, sleek fighter craft emerged, moving with precision and speed that defied logic. Explosions lit up the void of space as Delta Vanguard launched their counterattack, targeting critical weak points with surgical accuracy. Ryan watched in stunned silence as the tide turned rapidly. The enemy fleet, once so smug and certain of victory, crumbled under relentless pressure. Ships exploded left and right, their crews scrambling to retreat. Through it all, Delta Vanguard remained calm, methodical, almost graceful. They didn't waste shots or energy. Every move they made served a purpose, every strike calculated to maximize impact. But what struck Ryan most was the final moments of the battle. As the remaining enemy ships fled, Delta Vanguard didn't pursue. Instead, they regrouped, tending to their wounded and securing the area. The footage ended with a wide shot of the battlefield, littered with debris, but eerily silent. Delta Vanguard had won decisively, yet there was no sense of arrogance or triumph in their actions, only duty. When the screen went dark, Ryan remained seated, lost in thought. Sam approached quietly, standing beside him. "Well?" she asked softly. "They're not soldiers," Ryan said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're something else entirely." Sam nodded. "Exactly. They don't fight for glory or money. They fight because they have to, because they care." Ryan rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the mission pressing down on him even harder now. "If we go after them, we're not just fighting warriors. We're fighting ideals, beliefs. That's dangerous. It's also why nobody else will take this job," Sam pointed out. "Most mercenaries know better than to pick a fight with Delta Vanguard. But here we are, stuck between a rock and a hard place." Ryan sighed, standing up. "We need to prepare. If we're going to stand any chance, we'll have to outthink them, not just outgun them." Over the next several hours, the Iron Fangs threw themselves into planning. Ethan Cole scoured every database he could access, gathering intel on Delta Vanguard's recent operations. He cross-referenced reports, analyzed patterns, and pieced together a profile of their current leader, Commander Claire Bennett. Unlike Alex Hart, whose name was synonymous with brute force and tactical brilliance, Claire was known for her adaptability in psychological warfare. She didn't just win battles. She dismantled her enemy's morale before firing a single shot. Meanwhile, Mia Torres worked tirelessly in the armory, upgrading weapons and crafting specialized explosives designed to penetrate Delta Vanguard's defenses. Her hands moved quickly, assembling devices with practiced ease. Though she rarely spoke during these sessions, her focus was absolute. She understood the stakes better than anyone. If their gear failed, they wouldn't get a second chance. Lucas Bell spent hours calibrating his sniper rifle, ensuring it was perfectly tuned for long-range engagements. He practiced breathing techniques, visualizing scenarios where he might have a split-second opportunity to neutralize a key target. Though his role often kept him isolated from the rest of the team, Lucas took pride in his work. If anyone could make a difference in this mission, he believed it would be him. Jacob Hayes, on the other hand, focused on the ship itself. He ran diagnostics on the Crimson Talon's engines, shields, and cloaking systems, making sure everything was in top condition. Flying against Delta Vanguard would require more than just skill. It would demand perfection. And Jacob intended to deliver. As the day wore on, Ryan called another meeting in the war room. This time, the atmosphere was different. Gone was the uncertainty and hesitation from earlier. In its place was determination, tempered by respect for the challenge ahead. "All right," Ryan began, addressing his team. "We've done our homework. Delta Vanguard is fast, smart, and relentless, but they're not invincible. We can beat them if we play our cards right." Ethan stepped forward, activating the holographic map again. Based on recent activity, Delta Vanguard is operating near the outer rim of Earth's colonies. Specifically, they've been spotted patrolling an asteroid field designated Alpha 9. It's remote, densely packed, and perfect for ambushes. "That's where we'll hit them," Ryan said firmly. "We'll use their environment against them." "Ethan, I want you to rig decoys. Make them think we're coming from multiple angles. Mia, prep those explosives. We'll need to disable their mobility early on." Mia nodded sharply. "Already done. These babies will take out anything within a 100-meter radius." "Good," Ryan replied. "Lucas, find high ground positions. If you see an opening, take it. Don't hesitate." Lucas gave a curt nod, adjusting the strap of his rifle. "Understood." "And Jacob," Ryan continued, turning to the pilot, "you're our ace in the hole. Keep us mobile and unpredictable. If things go south, we'll need you to get us out alive." Jacob grinned, though it lacked his usual bravado. "Don't worry, boss. I'll have us dancing circles around them." Sam added her input next. "We'll also need contingency plans. Delta Vanguard doesn't stick to scripts. They improvise, adapt, and overcome. We need to be ready for anything." Ryan agreed. "Which means staying flexible. No rigid formations, no predictable patterns. We'll rely on communication and instinct." For the first time since receiving the contract, the Iron Fangs felt a glimmer of hope. They knew the odds were still stacked against them, but they also knew they couldn't afford to doubt themselves. Doubt would only lead to failure, and failure meant death. As the meeting concluded, Ryan addressed his team one last time. "This isn't just another job. This is Delta Vanguard. If we succeed, we'll prove ourselves to the galaxy. If we fail..." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "Let's just make sure we don't fail." With that, the crew dispersed, each member retreating to their stations to fine-tune their preparations. The countdown to departure had begun, and there was no turning back now. Whatever awaited them in the asteroid field, one thing was certain: the Iron Fangs were about to face the fight of their lives. The journey to Alpha 9 was long and tense. The Crimson Talon drifted silently through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly as it approached the asteroid field. The crew worked tirelessly, double-checking every detail of their plan. Each member knew that even the smallest mistake could mean disaster when facing Delta Vanguard. Ryan Carter paced the bridge, his eyes glued to the view screen as the jagged rocks of Alpha 9 came into view. The asteroids were massive, some as large as mountains, others no bigger than a shuttle. They floated in chaotic orbits, creating a labyrinth of shadows and debris. "This place is perfect for an ambush," Jacob Hayes muttered from the pilot's seat. His hands hovered over the controls, ready to maneuver the ship at a moment's notice. "Too many hiding spots." Ryan nodded grimly. "That's why they're here. Delta Vanguard knows how to use terrain to their advantage." Ethan Cole stood nearby, monitoring the ship's sensors. "I'm picking up faint energy signatures scattered throughout the field," he reported. "Could be them, but it's hard to tell. Their cloaking tech is top-notch." "Keep scanning," Ryan ordered. "We can't afford surprises." As they entered the asteroid field, the mood aboard the Crimson Talon grew heavier. The crew exchanged nervous glances, though. No one spoke aloud. Everyone understood the stakes. This wasn't just another skirmish, it was a test of survival against one of the deadliest forces in the galaxy. Hours passed, and the Iron Fangs moved cautiously, sticking to the edges of the asteroid field while Ethan continued to analyze the data. Finally, he turned to Ryan with a mixture of excitement and dread. "I think I've found something," he said, pointing to a cluster of readings on his screen. "There's activity near the center of the field. It matches Delta Vanguard's profile." Ryan studied the display carefully. "How sure are you?" 90%, Ethan replied. "It's subtle, but there's a pattern, like they're patrolling or setting up defenses." "That's good enough for me," Ryan decided. He activated the ship-wide comms. "Listen up, everyone. We've got a target. Prepare for deployment." The crew sprang into action. Mia Torres grabbed her explosives and checked her gear one last time before heading to the hangar bay. Lucas Bell slung his sniper rifle over his shoulder, his expression calm but focused. Samantha Brooks joined Ryan on the bridge, her hand resting on the hilt of her sidearm. "You ready for this?" she asked quietly. Ryan exhaled slowly. "As ready as I'll ever be." Jacob guided the Crimson Talon closer to the coordinates, weaving between the asteroids with expert precision. The ship's cloaking system masked their approach, giving them the element of surprise, or so they hoped. When they reached the designated area, Ryan gave the signal. "Deploy the decoys first. Let's see if we can draw them out." Ethan initiated the program, sending 4 drones equipped with fake energy signatures into the field. The drones mimicked the heat and movement of ships, designed to trick Delta Vanguard into thinking they were surrounded. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the Crimson Talon. "They know we're here," Ethan shouted, frantically typing commands into his console. "They've triggered defensive traps." Before anyone could react, explosions rocked the ship. Hidden mines detonated around them, forcing Jacob to pull sharp, evasive maneuvers. The crew stumbled, gripping whatever they could to stay upright. On the view screen, flashes of light illuminated the darkness as more traps went off, revealing the true extent of Delta Vanguard's preparation. "They anticipated us," Ryan growled, gripping the back of Jacob's chair. "How did they know?" Samantha clenched her fists. "Because they're Delta Vanguard. They don't wait for trouble. They make plans for it." Suddenly, sleek fighter craft emerged from behind the asteroids, their markings unmistakable. Delta Vanguard had arrived. Their movements were fluid and precise, circling the Crimson Talon like predators closing in on prey. Jacob cursed under his breath as he tried to evade their attacks, but the enemy pilots were too skilled. Lasers streaked past the ship, narrowly missing critical systems. "We need to get out of here," Jacob yelled. "I can't keep dodging. Forever." Ryan hesitated, torn between retreating and pressing forward. But then he noticed something strange. The fighters weren't firing directly at the ship. Instead, they seemed to be hurting it, forcing it deeper into the asteroid field. "They're trying to trap us," Ryan realized. "They want us grounded." Sure enough, moments later, a barrage of EMP blasts disabled the Crimson Talon's engines. The ship shuddered violently before coming to a halt, caught in the gravitational pull of a nearby asteroid. Jacob slammed his fist on the controls in frustration. We're dead in the water. Ryan quickly assessed their situation. Everyone suit up, we're going groundside. The team scrambled to the hangar bay, grabbing weapons and supplies as they prepared to disembark. As the airlock opened, they stepped onto the surface of the asteroid, greeted by eerie silence. The rocky terrain stretched endlessly in all directions, lit only by the distant glow of stars. Shadows danced across the landscape, making it difficult to see clearly. This feels wrong, Mia whispered, clutching her explosives tightly. It's too quiet. Stay sharp, Ryan ordered. They're watching us. As if on cue, a voice crackled over their comms, clear, calm, and commanding. This is Commander Claire Bennett of Delta Vanguard. You've wandered into restricted territory. Leave now, or face the consequences. Ryan froze, recognizing the name instantly. Claire Bennett, the woman who had taken over after Alex Hart. Her reputation was nearly as fearsome as his. He activated his own comm, responding cautiously. This is Captain Ryan Carter of the Iron Fangs. We didn't come looking for a fight. Then why are you here? Claire's tone was icy, leaving no room for negotiation. Ryan glanced at his team, weighing his options. Lying wouldn't work, not against someone like Claire. We were hired to neutralize your unit, he admitted reluctantly. But we underestimated you. If you let us leave, we'll walk away. No harm done. There was a pause, followed by a soft laugh. Neutralize? Us, that's ambitious. Tell me, Captain, do you really think mercenaries stand a chance against Earth's finest? Before Ryan could respond, movement caught his eye. Figures clad in black tactical armor appeared on the ridges above them, their weapons trained on, the Iron Fangs. More soldiers emerged from behind rocks and craters, surrounding them completely. Within seconds, the team was outnumbered and outgunned. Claire herself stepped forward, her presence commanding despite her relatively small stature. She wore a helmet that obscured most of her face, but her piercing blue eyes were visible through the visor. In her hands she held twin pistols, each gleaming ominously in the dim light. I'll give you one chance, she said, her voice steady. Surrender your weapons and I'll let you live. Resist, and you won't. Ryan raised his hands slowly, signaling his team to do the same. There was no point in fighting, not here, not now. Delta Vanguard had them cornered, and resistance would only end in bloodshed. As much as it stung to admit defeat, Ryan knew when to cut his losses. We surrender, he said, dropping his weapon to the ground. One by one, the rest of the Iron Fangs followed suit. Claire nodded approvingly. Smart choice. Take them aboard. The Guardian Dawn. Let's find out who sent them and why. As Delta Vanguard escorted the captured mercenaries away, Ryan couldn't help but marvel at their efficiency. Every move they made was deliberate, every decision calculated. They weren't just soldiers. They were a machine, perfectly synchronized, and utterly unstoppable. In that moment, Ryan understood why Galactic Mercenaries refused missions against Earth's special forces. It wasn't fear, it was respect. Delta Vanguard didn't just win battles. They earned admiration, even from their enemies. And as the Iron Fangs were led aboard Delta Vanguard's flagship, Ryan knew their lives would never be the same again. The interior of the Guardian Dawn was unlike anything the Iron Fangs had ever seen. The ship's corridors were sleek and modern, with smooth metallic walls that gleamed under soft overhead lights. Unlike the Crimson Talon, which felt rugged and utilitarian, Delta Vanguard's flagship exuded precision and purpose. Every detail, from the placement of equipment to the quiet hum of the engines, spoke of discipline and efficiency. As the captured mercenaries were led through the halls, they couldn't help but notice the soldiers moving about their duties with calm professionalism. There was no chaos, no wasted motion, just a sense of order that seemed almost alien in its perfection. Ryan Carter walked at the front of the group, his hands bound loosely behind his back. He kept his eyes forward, refusing to show fear or weakness. Samantha Brooks followed closely behind him, her expression unreadable, but her mind racing with possibilities. Mia Torres and Ethan Cole exchanged uneasy glances while Lucas Bell scanned the surroundings with sharp, calculating eyes. Jacob Hayes brought up the rear, muttering under his breath about how unfair it all was. They were taken to a large chamber that served as Delta Vanguard's command center. At the heart of the room stood Commander Claire Bennett, her helmet now removed to reveal short brown hair and a face marked by years of experience. She leaned against a console, her arms crossed as she watched the prisoners enter. Around her, officers worked silently at their stations, monitoring screens and relaying information without pause. "Welcome aboard," Claire said coolly, her voice carrying an edge of authority. "I trust your accommodations during transport were comfortable." Ryan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied her carefully, trying to gauge her intentions. Claire wasn't gloating or taunting them. There was something measured in her tone, almost as if she were sizing them up. Finally, he spoke. "We came here because we were hired, nothing more." Claire raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Hired? By whom?" "That's not our business," Ryan replied stiffly. "We're mercenaries. We take contracts. No questions asked." Claire straightened, stepping closer until she was just a few feet away from him. Her blue eyes bore into his, searching for any sign of deception. "You're right. You're mercenaries. You kill for money. But you should know something. Earth doesn't negotiate with people like you. And neither do I." Her words hung heavy in the air, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Ryan swallowed hard, realizing they were walking a dangerous line. Delta Vanguard wasn't interested in excuses or explanations. They wanted answers. "Look," Ryan began, lowering his voice slightly. "We didn't choose this mission. It was forced on us. Refusing would have meant death, for all of us." Claire tilted her head, considering his statement. "And yet here you are. Alive. So tell me, Captain Carter, what makes you think I won't simply eliminate you now?" Before Ryan could answer, Samantha stepped forward. "Because killing us won't solve your problem," she said firmly. "Whoever sent us will only hire someone else. Someone worse." Claire turned her gaze to Sam, studying her with interest. "Worse than mercenaries who attack Earth's special forces? That's quite a claim." Sam held her ground, meeting Claire's stare without flinching. "It's the truth. If you want to stop this, you need to go after the source, not us." For a moment, the room fell silent. Claire's expression softened slightly, though her posture remained rigid. She glanced at one of her officers, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Whatever decision she was weighing, it appeared she trusted her team's judgment. Finally, she sighed and gestured to the guards holding the iron fangs. "Release them." The order caught everyone off guard, including Ryan. "What?" he blurted. "Out," his voice tinged with disbelief. "You heard me," Claire said evenly. "Take off their restraints. They're no threat to us." As the guards complied, Mia rubbed her wrists cautiously, eyeing the nearest exit. Ethan adjusted his glasses, nervously, while Lucas tightened his grip on his rifle reflexively, even though it had been confiscated. Only Jacob seemed genuinely relieved, slumping against a nearby wall with a sigh of relief. Claire addressed the group once more. "Here's the deal. You tell me everything you know about who hired you and why, and I'll let you walk away. Lie to me, and you'll regret it." Ryan hesitated, torn between loyalty to his employers and self-preservation. But when he glanced at his team, he saw the same resolve reflected in their faces. They'd come too far to throw their lives away now. "It was a syndicate," Ryan admitted finally. "A powerful one. They offered us credits, more than we could refuse. All they told us was to neutralize Delta Vanguard. They didn't say why." Claire's jaw tightened, though she didn't seem surprised. "Syndicates always operate in the shadows, but they leave trails. Tell me their name." "We don't know," Ryan replied honestly. "They contacted us anonymously. Everything was encrypted." Claire frowned, clearly frustrated but unsurprised. Syndicates were masters of secrecy, and tracking them down wouldn't be easy. Still, she pressed further. Did they mention anything specific? Any locations, targets, or motives? Ethan spoke up this time, his voice trembling slightly. They mentioned Alpha 9 specifically. Said you'd be there conducting covert operations, that's all we know. Claire nodded thoughtfully, turning to one of her officers. Run a full sweep of recent intel on Alpha 9. See if anything matches. Up. As the officer hurried off to carry out the order, Claire returned her attention to the Iron Fangs. You've given me enough to work with for now. But understand this. If I find out you've lied to me, there won't be anywhere in the galaxy where you can hide. Ryan nodded solemnly. Understood. Claire gestured toward the door. You're free to go. My crew will escort you back to your ship and ensure you leave this sector immediately. Don't come back. The Iron Fangs exchanged wary glances but didn't argue. They followed the escorts out of the command center, retracing their steps, through the pristine corridors of the Guardian Dawn. The journey felt surreal, as if they were walking through a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Despite their freedom, none of them felt truly safe. Delta Vanguard's presence lingered in every shadow, a reminder of how close they had come to disaster. When they reached the Crimson Talon, Jacob wasted no time powering up the engines. Let's get out of here before they change their minds, he muttered, gripping the controls tightly. Ryan didn't disagree. As the ship disengaged from the asteroid and began its ascent, he stared out the view screen at the Guardian Dawn, still docked among the rocks. For a brief moment he wondered, what might have happened if they hadn't surrendered, if they had fought back instead of admitting defeat? Would they have stood a chance? Or would Delta Vanguard have wiped them out completely? Samantha broke the silence, voicing what everyone else was thinking. That woman, Claire, she's not like anyone we've faced before. Ryan nodded slowly. She's not just a soldier. She's a leader, a protector. She fights for something bigger than herself. And that's why we lost, Mia added bitterly. We don't have that. We never did. The truth of her words settled over the crew like a weight. They were mercenaries, hired guns with no cause, no purpose beyond survival and profit. Delta Vanguard, on the other hand, fought for Earth, for humanity, for ideals that transcended personal gain. It wasn't just skill or technology that set them apart. It was their conviction. Azo. The Crimson Talon entered hyperspace, leaving Alpha 9 far behind. Ryan called another meeting in the war room. The crew gathered around the table, their expressions somber but determined. We made a mistake taking this job, Ryan began, his voice steady. But we can fix it. If we really want to survive, we need to make a choice. What kind of choice? Jacob asked cautiously. Ryan leaned forward, locking eyes with each member of his team. We can keep running, to new jobs, new contracts, new corners of the galaxy. Or we can stand for something. Something real. Sam smiled faintly, understanding dawning in her eyes. You mean... I mean we tip off Delta Vanguard, Ryan interrupted. We give them everything we have on the syndicate. Intel, patterns, anything that might help. Them track them down. The room fell silent as the weight of his suggestion sank in. Betraying their employers was risky. It could make enemies of some of the most powerful figures in the galaxy. But staying silent would only prolong the conflict, putting countless lives at risk. After a long pause, Mia spoke up. If we do this, we're done. No more mercenary work. No more hiding in the shadows. Ryan nodded. Exactly. This is our chance to be better, to matter. One by one, the others agreed. Though the road ahead would be uncertain, they knew it was the right decision. For the first time in their lives, the Iron Fangs weren't fighting for credits or contracts. They were fighting for something greater. And so, as the Crimson Talon sped through the stars, its crew began compiling every scrap of information they had on the syndicate. They encrypted the data and transmitted it to Delta Vanguard, knowing it might be their last act as mercenaries, but also their first step toward redemption. In the days that followed, word spread quickly among galactic circles. The Iron Fangs. had vanished, their trail gone cold. Some speculated they had been eliminated by Delta Vanguard, while others believed they had disbanded entirely. What no one realized, at least not yet, was that the Iron Fangs had chosen a new path. The transmission from the Crimson Talon reached Delta Vanguard's flagship, the Guardian Dawn, in the dead of space. It was encrypted, but Claire Bennett's team of analysts cracked it within minutes. When the data spilled onto their screens, Claire felt a surge of both satisfaction and unease. Satisfaction because the intel provided by the Iron Fangs was detailed: names, locations, patterns, and even fragments of intercepted communications that pointed directly to the syndicate behind the attack. Unease because the scope of the conspiracy was far greater than she had anticipated. Claire called an emergency meeting in the command center, her officers gathering quickly around the holographic table at the heart of the room. The projection displayed a web of connections linking the syndicate to several high-profile figures across the galaxy: wealthy industrialists, corrupt politicians, and rogue factions all working together to destabilize Earth's influence. At the center of it all was a shadowy figure known only as the Architect, whose identity remained hidden but whose fingerprints were everywhere. "This goes deeper than we thought," Claire said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. She tapped a few commands on the console, highlighting key nodes in the network. "If we don't act fast, they'll escalate, and next time it won't just be mercenaries, they'll send everything they've got." Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Noah Hayes, frowned as he studied the map. "They're spread thin, Commander. Taking them down won't be easy. We'll need precision strikes coordinated across multiple sectors." Claire nodded. "Agreed. But we can't do this alone. Not without risking exposure." She paused, glancing at her team. "We'll need help." Noah raised an eyebrow. "Help? From who? Most of our allies are already stretched thin defending Earth's borders." "I'm not talking about allies," Claire replied cryptically. "I'm talking about assets." Meanwhile, aboard the Crimson Talon, Ryan Carter and his crew were navigating uncharted territory, not just in space, but in morality. They had sent the intel to Delta Vanguard, but the decision weighed heavily on them. For years they had lived by one rule: take the job, get paid, and don't ask questions. Now, for the first time, they had taken a stand, and it left them feeling strangely vulnerable. "What happens if they come after us?" Jacob Hayes asked nervously as he piloted the ship through a dense asteroid field. His knuckles were white on the controls, though the tension wasn't entirely due to the treacherous terrain. "You know those guys don't forgive easily. They won't find us," Ryan assured him, though his tone lacked conviction. He leaned back in his seat, staring out the view screen at the endless expanse of stars. "Besides, we did the right thing. That counts for something." Mia Torres snorted from her position near the rear of the cockpit. "Since when do we care about doing the right thing? Last I checked, we're mercenaries. We're supposed to be selfish bastards." "And look where that got us, Samantha," Brooks interjected sharply. She sat beside Ryan, arms crossed, her sharp eyes fixed on Mia. "Running scared, getting played like pawns. Maybe it's time we stopped being selfish." Ethan Cole, who had been quietly monitoring the ship's systems, chimed in hesitantly. "It's not just about being selfish or selfless, it's about survival. If Delta Vanguard takes down the syndicate, we're safer. If they don't..." He trailed off, leaving the grim implication hanging in the air. Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Enough. Arguing won't change anything. What's done is done. Now we focus on staying alive." But staying alive wasn't going to be easy. Hours later, alarms blared throughout the ship, startling the crew. Ethan scrambled to his station, frantically typing commands into the console. "We've got company," he shouted. "Multiple. Ships closing in fast." Jacob swore under his breath as he adjusted the ship's trajectory, trying to evade the incoming vessels. On the view screen, sleek black cruisers emerged from the darkness, their markings unfamiliar but menacing. These weren't Delta Vanguard, they were bounty hunters, hired guns sent by the syndicate to silence the Iron Fangs permanently. "They tracked us," Lucas Bell muttered, gripping his rifle tightly. How? Doesn't matter now. Ryan snapped, already moving toward the armory. Get ready to fight. The battle began almost immediately. Lasers streaked past, the Crimson Talon, as the bounty hunters opened fire, forcing Jacob to pull evasive maneuvers that rattled the entire ship. Explosions rocked the hull, sending shockwaves through the corridors. The crew braced themselves, knowing they couldn't outrun their pursuers forever. We need a plan, Samantha said urgently, joining Ryan in the hangar bay. We can't win this head-on. Ryan nodded, his mind racing. We'll split up. Mia, you and Ethan set charges, on the lower decks. Make them think we're trying to disable their ships. Sam, you and Lucas cover the upper levels, pick them off one by one. Jacob, keep the ship moving, don't let them board. What about you? Samantha asked, her voice laced with concern. Ryan grabbed a plasma rifle and slung it over his shoulder. I'll draw their fire. Keep them distracted while you work. Before anyone could argue, the plan was set in motion. Mia and Ethan disappeared into the bowels of the ship, setting traps and arming explosives. Samantha and Lucas took positions near the observation deck, using the ship's limited defenses to pick off enemy fighters. Meanwhile, Ryan led a small contingent of decoys toward the main airlock, drawing the attention of the bounty hunters. As the fighting intensified, the Crimson Talon became a war zone. Smoke filled the corridors and the sound of gunfire echoed through the halls. Despite the chaos, the crew worked with a unity they hadn't shown in years. Each member trusted the others to do their part, knowing that failure meant death for all of them. On the bridge, Jacob fought desperately to keep the ship intact. Sweat dripped down his face as he dodged missiles and energy blasts, weaving through the asteroid field with reckless abandon. Come on, baby, he muttered to himself, patting the control panel. Don't fail me now. Below decks, Mia and Ethan planted the final charge, a massive explosive designed to cripple any ship that came too close. That should do it, Mia said, grinning despite the danger. Let's hope Ryan gets clear in time. Back at the airlock, Ryan stood his ground as waves of bounty hunters closed in. His rifle barked fire, cutting down enemies with deadly precision. But he knew he couldn't hold them off forever. As the last of his ammo ran dry, he activated the detonator, triggering the explosives Mia and Ethan had planted. The resulting blast tore through the pursuing ships, sending debris spiraling into the void. Several cruisers were destroyed outright, while others retreated, damaged beyond repair. The surviving bounty hunters regrouped, clearly unwilling to risk further casualties. They're pulling back, Lucas reported over the comms, his voice tinged with relief. Ryan allowed himself a brief moment of triumph before turning to his team. Good work, everyone. But this isn't over. The Syndicate will send more. We need to disappear, and fast. As the Crimson Talon limped away from the battlefield, its crew patched up wounds and assessed the damage. Though victorious, they knew their reprieve was temporary. The Syndicate wouldn't stop until the Iron Fangs were eliminated, or worse. In the days that followed, Ryan made a bold decision. Using what remained of their resources, he rerouted the ship to a remote sector of space, a haven for outcasts and fugitives. There, they would lay low, regroup, and prepare for whatever came next. But more importantly, they would wait for signs that Delta Vanguard had succeeded in dismantling the Syndicate. If they win, Ryan told his crew one evening as they gathered in the mess hall, we might have a chance to start over, to do things differently. Samantha smiled faintly, raising her cup in a silent toast. To redemption, then. To redemption, the others echoed, their voices carrying a mix of hope and determination. Though the road ahead was uncertain, the Iron Gangs had found something they had never expected, purpose, and in the vastness of space that made all the difference.